Hello and welcome to Learn Spanish a lo Boricua. It's time for class. Today we're reviewing the conversation from the previous episode, which was called El Gym Ser Consistentes. As always, I recommend that you view today's episode on YouTube. The link to do so is right there in the podcast description. And if you yourself are a fellow fitness enthusiast, we'd love to hear from you. I'm not kidding when I say that I'm a gym bro. You can see it in my Instagram profile. I say, Spanish tutor, right? Yoga teacher, Puerto Rico living. And what's there? The next line, closet gym bro. I can talk about exercise until I'm blue in the face. So I'd love to hear from you. I know that we are for sure that we have a power lifter listening to us. Kirsten, thank you so much for commenting on the episode in YouTube. I was trying to be respectful, but know that I'm dying to ask you what your numbers are for squat, deadlift, and bench, and talk to you about how to improve my pathetic bench, because 2 years later, we've not gotten the numbers up very much as we'd like to. I really do enjoy this. Is a topic that I'm very passionate about. Exercise has always been part of my life. I got my first group fitness certification when I was 19. I started teaching in the gym, and then it was something after college that I ended up doing for about 3 to 4 years. I taught a variety of things. You guys know, I think at this point that I'm still teach yoga. I've taught everything from kickboxing, dance kind of classes, a bar class at the gym, to high intensity interval training, Tabata type classes, kickboxing, if I already said that, etc. Senior boot camp. I absolutely love exercise. So this was a pleasure to do. Know that this episode was much longer when we first recorded it. We cut out a fair amount, and we could keep, make many more episodes in the future about exercise. So comment, you can practice your Spanish in the comments. It doesn't have to be perfect. Try to get your point across. Tell us a little bit about your preferred way to do exercise. We'd love to hear from you. Like I said, just because this stuff really, truly is something that I'm passionate about. This is what I used to teach before I started teaching Spanish, before the pandemic came and shut down all of those in-person sort of dance classes, gym, etc. All right. As always, we're going to be going over the vocab. Mainly is going to be a big chunk of what we're talking about today, the gym-related vocab that came up. And we're going to kind of split that into things that are really physical, talking about exercise as parts of the body, and then more of the abstract conversation that we had about discipline, about consistency, etc., and some of the vocab that came up from that part of the conversation. There were some great quotes from the episode, so I'd like to review those. And then I've got one subjunctive note and correction for myself. Would be a good thing to keep in mind for those who are working on the subjunctive. Without further ado, let's start with some of the terms for general fitness types of exercise. Notice that the name of the episode and what you would have mainly heard in our conversation is that in Puerto Rico, it's going to be called El Gym. A lot of times it's going to be El Gym. It doesn't mean that gimnasio is never used. Okay, it doesn't mean that, they're going to look at you crazy if you say the word gimnasio, but know that gym, because it's shorter and more efficient, just like we're more likely to say that instead of gymnasium, is going to be what you hear often. Okay, shorter, more efficient way to say it. A lot of times they go for English because it is, I would say 98% of the time, quicker, more efficient. All right, el gym. If you didn't know already, the phrase hacer ejercicio is what you need in order to say to work out or to exercise. You need hacer ejercicio. You might also see that there's a verb from ejercitar or something along those lines. That's more like to exercise, as far as exercise your rights to do something, etc. It's not going to be what they use for to work out. Hacer, you need the verb hacer, to do. Ejercicio is exercise. I've heard all sorts of variations from students with the word ejercicio. So let's break it down. The first syllable is e. Then the next one's going to be like hair, the thing you have on your head. Hair. Then you need cio, ejercicio. You need to make 5 sounds. Ejercicio. Sometimes people like to drop a syllable in this word, because I know there's a lot going on, but you need to have 5 sounds. Ejercicio. All right, we've got levantamiento de pesas. I use this phrase quite a few times for weightlifting, strength training. However, I need you to know that I'm not referring to weightlifting as in the Olympic sport, okay? If you are somebody that goes into the gym and does strength training type exercises, you pick up the dumbbells and the barbells, you use resistant bands, etc., you are doing levantamiento de pesas. levantamiento de pesas, weightlifting, strength training. The Olympic sport that includes the two lifts of the snatch and the clean and press, that is called halterophilia. This did not come up in the episode because Alfredo and I are not weightlifters and of the Olympic sport kind, rather the strength training kind. But I did want to make that differentiation in case you yourself are a weightlifter who trains snatch and clean and press. Okay, halterophilia. I did have the pleasure of working with a student once who competes in weightlifting and Olympic weightlifting. Okay, the sport Olympic wise, clean and press and snatch are going to be halterophilia. Levantamiento de pesas is for all of us who do maybe strength training just in the gym. And then finally, powerlifting is just, I went and checked this. I just said this in English when I got to the point of saying that the program that I follow was designed by a professional powerlifter. I just said that in English. Know that powerlifting is going to be said in English too. Okay, there's not, I looked it up. They were suggesting levantamiento de pesas. I'm sure when referring to the sport, Puerto Ricans would be using the word powerlifting. All right, some other vocab related to exercise. Fortalecer. Fortalecer is to strengthen. Fortalecer. You would have heard us talk about that in the episode. Estoy yendo. I just wanted to go over this as you may already be familiar with the formations of INGs in Spanish. So when we're looking at AR verbs, right? Verbs that end in AR, like hablar, bailar, dejar, etc., trabajar, you're going to form the ING by using the ending ando. So trabajando is working, bailando, dancing, hablando, talking. Okay. When it's an ER or an IR verb, know that you're looking at a yendo ending. Okay. Here's for AR verb, we're going to make it ando. If it's ER, IR, you change it to yendo. So if it's vivir, to live, if you want to make it living, it's going to be what? Viviendo, right? How about eating? I'm eating right now. How would that be from comer? Comiendo. Exacto. How about write? Escribir. How would you say I'm writing a letter? Estoy escribiendo una carta. Or if we're going to do it in good Puerto Rican, it might sound like estoy escribiendo. Estoy dropping the ES, right? And I'm not pronouncing the S so much. All right, so what happens with the verb ir? It's just the ending, right? It only has IR. It turns into yendo, right? It would technically just be this because you add that on to the end of verb, just like we make comer into comiendo, or we made escribir into escribiendo, right? We only have an IR to deal with though, so it would just be yendo. There's just one little spell change there. We make it a Y, yendo. Okay, so it's going to have a little bit of that just sound as well at the beginning. Estoy yendo is what I said there. Estoy yendo al gimnasio. Let's come back to our. And luckily, right on the next line, we have what follows that. 4 días a la semana. Isn't it nice to know that just how your English brain would say this, which is actually using the letter A, 4 days a week. Also, we would say in English, 4 days a week. You can use that exact same formula in Spanish. You need 4 días, the letter A, la semana. 4 días a la semana. How would you say twice a week, friends? Or 2 days a week. Right? 2 days a week would be 2 días a la semana. 2 días a la semana, 2 days a week. Twice a week, referring to 2 times a week, would be 2 veces a la semana. Twice a week, making 2 times a week or 2 days a week, okay? How would you say 3 times a month? 3 times. I'm looking for veces. 3 veces al mes. 3 veces al mes. 3 times a month. So I'm using a. Since I had the, it became al. Right? A el mes, that would turn into al mes. Correct? 3 veces al mes. 3 times a month. Very convenient. Please write that down. Good. We've got, you will have heard us referring to piernas multiple times. I don't think that we necessarily said Dia de piernas, but that's how you would say leg day, dia de piernas. And you're going to also hear us use Spanglish for upper body, and it'll sound a little bit like upper body. Listen to Alfredo, how he says it, because he'll have the better Spanish pronunciation of the English word upper body. I tend to default to, my native pronunciation. Upper body, it'll sound something like that. I don't know. There's not a term that I've heard people use in the gym to refer to upper body. They're going to say that mainly in in English, excuse me. They're going to say it in English. But otherwise, if I was going to stay in Spanish, I would just say it would be dia de brazo y espalda. I would talk about really the parts of the body that was working, shoulders, arms, back, etc. If you want to just use the phrase upper body, you're going to do it in English. Thank God for Spanglish, y'all. Ooh, speaking of which, we've got more. A lot of times in Puerto Rico, you're going to find that they're using Spanglish. I'm going to share with you guys at the end of the video some accounts that I love to follow, some Puerto Rican trainers and fitness accounts, and you'll see the use of Spanglish in those videos as well. The Spanish word for squats is sentadillas. And again, I can't say you'd never hear it on the island. I'd say it's going to be much, much more likely to hear squats for this, but you might hear sentadillas, for example. Some of these fitness influencers, or if you guys the algorithm ends up helping you to find other influencers from Puerto Rico, and they use words like sentadillas or what it would be in Spanish, know that they might also try to appeal to all of Latin America with their accounts. They're not trying to narrow themselves just to Puerto Rico, so they might incorporate some of what would be used more universally in Latin America, but know that Spanglish is going to be used a whole hell of a lot in the gym. Okay. Same thing, deadlift would actually be called el peso muerto, peso being weight, muerto dead, so it's dead weight here. Makes sense as a deadlift, but you're also going to hear people say deadlift. You'll notice Alfredo they talked about a Romanian deadlift. He did not say Romanian peso muerto Romaniano. He did not say that. He said Romanian deadlift. Right? Alfredo mentioned la fuerza bruta. How nice. If you know that, if you're familiar with fuerza being strength, then this makes a lot of sense for brute strength or brute force. La fuerza bruta. Know that. And this is obviously in the context of brute, so brute strength. It completely makes sense in this context. But be careful, because bruta and bruto also means stupid. Okay? Me siento bruta. I feel dumb. I feel stupid. A couple more partes del cuerpo, específicamente. El brazo. I know that in a recent episode, I went over some of the body parts. So just slowly by slowly. I don't think that's how we say it in English. Little by little, adding to your body part vocabulary. So we've got el brazo. Please remember that your Z's will not be pronounced like a buzzy sound, though we do Z. So it needs to sound like an S, brazo, el brazo. And know that if you are referring to your right or left arm, your right or left hand, your right or left leg, that you need to match the words right and left to the gender of the body part you're describing. This was definitely a huge brain struggle for me when I started teaching yoga in Spanish. Okay, el brazo derecho would be your right arm, el brazo izquierdo. But remember that la mano is feminine, so you need to say la mano derecha, la mano izquierda, la pierna derecha, la pierna izquierda, el pie derecho, el pie izquierdo. Moving on, we've got back, la espalda, or as it will probably be pronounced in Puerto Rico, la espalda. That little breath out sound, la espalda, espalda, la espalda. Okay, is your back. We've got los abdominales. That's pretty straightforward. Los abdominales is your abs. Okay. La cadera. This will also refer to when you're doing an exercise core workout. They will call it also. Alfredo will text me or at the gym and he'll say, solo me faltan abdominales. So I only have abs left. He's referring to, of course, the exercise. La cadera. La cadera. La cadera. If you haven't heard this, if you haven't gotten this yet from music, you're not listening to enough music in Spanish. La cadera is hip. That did come up also in the episode. I just wanted to put these two here at the bottom once this bar goes away. Know that when it's a scientific word, it's going to be very, very similar. When we're talking about, anatomically referring to the muscles, it's going to sound very, very similar. The frustration usually with that is that the emphasis falls on a different place. So you pretty much have the word, but until you find the right emphasis, it's going to be hard to pronounce it. So, for example, like we would just say traps, right? Trapecio is what that's going to be. It's, of course, trapezius in English is what it's called. I can't remember last time I've said, unless I was in an anatomy type class where I've heard somebody say trapezius in not in a formal class type setting or course type setting where they're talking about, the anatomical parts of the body. People normally call this traps. Know that in Spanish it has to be trapecio. The same thing with quads. We call them quads. We rarely say quadriceps, but in Spanish it would have to be quadricep. Biceps, no, bicep, etc. No, tricep. Just change your pronunciation. Okay. It is not bi and it's not tri. That is never how an I is pronounced in Spanish. It's always E, bicep, tricep, quadricep. Okay. So watch out for those. By default, you will make a flatter I sound because that's what it is in English. Try to be mindful of that and you'll improve your overall sound. Okay, a little bit of parts of the body, pretty straightforward there, what you would imagine. All right, now we're going to get into a little bit more of the abstract as far as commitment, motivation, etc. that we talked about in the episode. So I want to introduce you both to these two forms of the words consistent and consistency. Okay, consistente, la consistencia, constante, y la constancia. You're going to see both of these come up in Spanish. I would say that whenever, let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. It's not an I would say. When you are referring to the consistency of a liquid, of food, of something, kind of the texture, the consistency, it's always going to be consistencia. Looking at the definitions of these, I would say constancia lends itself better to the abstract idea of consistency, as in you showing up over and over again, doing something repetitively. All right. Constancia actually seems to lend itself, from the dictionary, that should be the word to imply that someone is consistency, right? And constante would be also to describe somebody as consistent. Eres una persona muy constante. Okay, I don't know if it's just because of the presence of English in Puerto Rico that also consistente, consistencia will absolutely be used to talk about these things as well. Consistency and consistent. When you look at it in the dictionary, like I said, this seems to more refer to the consistency as in of a liquid, of a food. But it seems like in Puerto Rico, they're a little bit more flexible. That's probably because of the sound of what it is in English, consistency, and people having exposure to that. Okay, that's my observation. I definitely know dictionary-wise that that's what those look like. But you will have noticed that Alfredo was not switching to constante. It wasn't just something I was doing because of my English brain. Alfredo was also using the words consistencia and consistente. Okay, just wanted you to be aware of that in case you see these guys come up. La disciplina, that's so nice and easy for us to learn. La disciplina is discipline. Alfredo opening up here about his own fitness journey and talking about his weakness and his complex, a little bit of his insecurities and things that he's like to work on. Mi debilidad, debilidad is weakness. Okay, he said mi debilidad. He was talking about his legs. It's harder for him to build muscle in his legs. Mi debilidad, my weakness. You could also talk about this. Mi debilidad, el chocolate, my weakness, right? This could go into all sorts of things. Debilidad. Ya sabes mi debilidad. Now you know my weakness. Ya sabes mi debilidad. This would also be one that would come up in reggaeton and different songs. I'm sure that. And complejo, just like in English, how complex can refer to something complicated, or it could refer to a complex as in an insecurity. In Spanish, it has those two meanings as well. Complejo can refer to something being complex as in difficult, but it can also refer to someone's complex, their insecurity. So Alfredo used that, mi complejo. Okay, mi complejo. I just remembered something, y'all, that I had meant to talk about while we were going over the different words for working out, whether it was levantamiento de pesa, halterofilia, etc. This being the same word in English triggered my memory of that. I wanted to mention, I am talked about this in the episode, pretty straightforward. The word for cardio in English is cardio. In Spanish and in Puerto Rico, it might sound like cal. You might hear that L sound, right? Cardio. But no, it's the same damn word, just pronounce it in Spanish. Okay. Back to your regularly scheduled program. La entrega, delivery. If you are familiar with entregar, la entrega is the word for delivery, is in your package is out for delivery. You might have been confused that I use this term in the podcast. Yes, but entrega also means dedication, devotion, commitment. I was tired of saying consistencia, disciplina. I needed some other adjectives there, some other nouns. So I threw an entrega in there, and I also used the verb entre. I said, I think we were talking about, having one lifetime to really dedicate yourself to the things that you want to do in your lifetime. Entregarse would be a good choice there. Devote oneself to dedicate oneself to hand oneself over to. Entregarse can have a couple of different meanings depending on the context, but know that I was looking for some other synonyms. I was starting to feel repetitive, so I use this one, a little bit fancier, a little bit palabra de domingo, quizás, a little fancy. Dedication, devotion, commitment, to devote oneself to. All right, two other things that came up. Alfredo was talking about pensando a largo plazo. He's thinking about the long term with his health. Okay, a largo plazo is how you say long term. A largo plazo. You need the a there. Now, if you were going to make this long term symptoms, síntomas a largo plazo, you need that a and you need largo plazo. To make it short term, we just change largo to corto. A corto plazo would make something short term. Corto plazo. Okay. You will have heard Alfredo say un desarreglo when referring to la dieta, right? He's been very strict with his diet, really committed to nutrition. And un desarreglo, you're going to see translated as a mess or a disorder. You could walk into a room and say, había un desarreglo. There was a mess of disorder in the room. But in the context, however, I have heard multiple times in Puerto Rico that in the context of diet, people will use un desarreglo to say that you messed up your diet. Okay, or kind of like a cheat meal. Notice they're going to use, Alfredo used it in the episode. He specifically said cheat meal day, cheat day. But know that desarreglo in this context is used often to refer that you just messed up your diet, period. Un desarreglo. All right, guys. Now, I wanted to share some of the quotes that I loved from this episode. First of all, del cielo a la tierra. I learned this phrase a while ago and from a Puerto Rican podcast years ago, a woman talking about un cambio del cielo a la tierra. So imagine this, how we say that something would be a change like from night to day. From night to day, or sometimes we'll just say it's like night and day to compare to very vastly different things, right? Or a big change, a big shift. That's in Spanish going to be expressed from a change from heaven to earth. Okay, that's pretty sweet. So del cielo a la tierra is going to imply the phrase from night to day, a drastic change. Alfredo said the next line, me va a recompensar después. Me va a recompensar después. It's going, I think the best translation I can offer for that truly is it's going to pay off afterwards. Me va a recompensar después. But know that recompensar is like to reward. I really think this idea of paying off is the best way to think of it in the context that this line was given in. But I need you to know that also recompensar means to reward. Let's look at an example here. Es una excelente manera de reconocer y recompensar al equipo. Okay, it's a excellent way to recognize and reward your team or the team. We're referring to a team of people, obviously. Okay, and that's why we had the a there, personal a. All right. Alfredo rescued me. You guys didn't know how long of a pause there was before. I couldn't figure out how I wanted to wrap up what the hell I was saying. So I just did so. Alfredo jumped in. Thank God. Was so metan caña. which is going to be much more popular, I believe, in el sur de Puerto Rico, using the metancaña or metecaña en vez de metanmano or metemano. That's definitely going to be used more in el área metro. I don't know. I haven't lived in every pueblo of Puerto Rico, so I cannot speak for every pueblo of Puerto Rico, but I have a general sense that in el sur they use caña, and more in the north or in el área metro, they're going to use mano. The idea here, meter, is to put something in, right? So it's literally get your hand in. Okay, caña being like coming from sugarcane. So this is just a cultural kind of saying, considering their background, the agricultural background. All right, it's the best way I can just translate this really is like, go do it, or go for it, or do the work, go do it. I saw, you know, I looked up just to see, and there's a Puerto Rican like page with some slang that said, try your hand at it. Maybe in some contexts, yes, but know that this is used a lot of times. Alfredo and I, for example, on the phone, we're chatting, he gets to the gym, he pulled up, okay, pues ya llegué al gym, y yo, dale, mete mano, mete caña. Would be the natural thing. It's like, okay, go for it. Go do you, go have a good time. It's kind of like telling somebody to get into the work that they're about to be doing, period. Doesn't be hard to nail down one specific translation. Mete mano is used in a lot of contexts. You'll hear it in reggaeton too. People talking about, you know, mete mano, you know, I do the work, I put the work in, type of thing. Right? Very important phrase to have in Puerto Ricans use all the time. Love that Alfredo used this. This is no te auto-sabotees. No te auto-sabotees. Sabotear, to sabotage. So don't self-sabotage. Okay, auto is always going to be how you form self in Spanish, right? So, well, I shouldn't say always, because you have things like myself, which would be mi misma, right? But in things like your self-esteem, el autoestima, self-sabotage, etc. Those are your self-image, la autoimagen. The auto is going to be the case a lot of times for self when it's used sort of as a prefix, I would say. Self-sabotage, self-image, self-worth, etc. It's like auto-sabotees. There are two E's, so it can't just sound like sabotees. That would not be the right pronunciation. Sabotees. There are two E's. You have to make two E sounds. It's just like what you should be doing when you say the verb leer. Y le. It's not just le, that's L-E. And that means something different. I said that Alfredo no es muy bebedor. This is not so much necessarily referring to, sorry, I just want this little thing to go away, my bottom taskbar. No es muy bebedor. He's not much of a drinker. This doesn't necessarily have to do with gym stuff, but we were talking about, he said in the context of people making fun of him for eating healthy and, you know, oh, wow, look at you, you're on a diet type of thing. And we said that people will do the same exact thing if you don't drink. You know, if you have, oh, okay, wow, oh, you're getting water, wow, so wholesome. You know, we tend to make fun of people for making healthy choices for their life. We're very helpful, healthy humans. And it's because coming from a place where we don't feel good about ourselves, so we bring other people down with us, right? You don't want to give them the moral high ground. No es muy bebedor. If this was a female, it'd be no es muy bebedora, to say that someone's a drinker or not a drinker. Y finalmente, I talked about vivir sin arrepentimientos, living without regrets. Yep, that's a long one. Arrepentimientos. Arrepentimientos. I would draw my little cursor right over here, but every time I do it, the taskbar goes up and we're blocked. So, arrepentimientos. Try that. Live without regrets. I think that's important. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here in Puerto Rico. I was sure that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't follow through in this dream of immersing myself in Spanish as an adult and as an independent person, living my life in this language that I've studied for nearly fucking 20 years. Just one subjunctive note, friends. I had this, you'll see that I corrected this in the transcript. But I did not say it correctly in the podcast. I did say it right in another podcast. I somehow managed to pull out past subjunctive just fine, but in this episode I did not, my brain did not snap to it. whenever you're using anyone, which is going to sound like cualquier persona que, anyone who blah, 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 that's going to be a subjunctive statement because you don't know who that anyone group belongs to, okay? Don't try to apply this just to general things. I have a student who uses a quote that I love. I don't know if I've said it yet in the podcast. She says, when you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, okay? So just stick with me. What happens to the subjunctive, and really with anything that people learn, when people learn reflexive verbs, they believe that everything's reflexive. They start adding the me, te, se to every single verb they're using, right? They got a hammer in the hand, everything starts to look like a nail. When you're hearing about, oh, anyone who, so does that mean when I'm saying this, don't do that. Don't stray, because you're going to start using it where it doesn't go. The rules of the subjunctive are highly particular. Okay, so just know this formula. Cualquier persona que subjunctive. That's it. Don't stretch yourself out further than that right now. Cualquier persona que subjunctive. That's what you need to write down in your notes if you're already into the subjunctive. Cualquier persona que, verb next needs to be in the subjunctive. Cualquier persona que vaya al gym sabe que is what I should have said. I said cualquier persona que va. Not correct. I don't know who it is. I'm referring to any number of human beings on the planet that do this. Okay. Cualquier persona que vaya al gym sabe que. Couple more examples. Cualquier persona que la conozca. Anyone who knows her. Cualquier persona que la conozca. Diría lo mismo. Would say the same. Cualquier persona que trabaje con animales. Anyone who works with animals knows that. You go well to kind of that sort of knows that or understands or something kind of statements. Okay. Cualquier persona que subjunctive. Thank you. All right, but before we go, I told you I wanted to share some accounts so that you guys can follow. If you are a fitness enthusiast, it's a really good idea to follow influencers, Puerto Rican influencers, so that you can learn more of the vocab. You're getting more Spanish in your eyes and ears when you're doing all your scrolling and etc. It's great to read their captions. It's great to go in and read the comments. All of that is accumulates into your learning, whether it's that you added a couple words from you looking into some comments and captions and watching some videos, that over the period of a year translates to a whole lot of language that you've got in your toolbox. Let's look at two that I enjoy here. I'm going to first start with Desmond Santiago. Desmond Santiago here, who has quite a few videos. You're going to see this is a really good example of of the Spanglish. So let's listen to this together. And I wanted to give notice how you're going to see the Spanglish present right here in his captions, the things that we're looking at right now, right? Working the core, entrenamiento versus realidad, domínalas, usa las bandas de forma efectiva. Let's listen to this video. No better example of what the reality of exercise.
La línea de polea con los brazos. So, tú no quieres que los brazos estén aquí, porque la idea no es que ales hacia acá. Tú quieres alar hacia tu cara. No quieres levantar las nalgas tampoco. So, you want to sit upright. No te quieres reclinar tanto. So, tú no quieres tampoco usar tanto peso que tengas que reclinarte para contrarrestarlo. You want to be upright. Cómodo aquí. Pero entonces de aquí, you're going to pull towards your face. Hacia tu cara. And then you're going to externally rotate. Y vuelves acá y extiende. Always following the pattern del cable. Exacto. Se supone que sea un movimiento no separado. As one. You pull out. Para hacer espacio, porque si no separas las manos, you're going to hit yourself. So prácticamente piensa en eso. Tú quieres separar y traer esto lo más posible a tu cara.
Perfect example of what training would really sound like.
La línea.
Notice that he would do, y quieres jalar towards your face and pull out, right? Vas a jalar hacia la cara y externally rotate. This is essential Puerto Rican training sounds, okay? Understand that the Spanglish is going to be used. He's a great one to follow. You'll get a lot of information also.
El problema de las bandas es muchas veces.
Las bandas elásticas son herramientas versátiles en el entrenamiento, etc. You can read here. You're going to get a lot of great vocab, like I said, with the captions, as well as some of the comments as well. Okay, this guy is also into training. So you can check that page out as well. And, you know, the algorithm helps you. So the more of these accounts you follow, the more they're going to suggest to you. All right, we've got one more. This guy's very fun. His tagline is Senda mierda. Senda is a slang of tremenda. So when they say senda mierda, they're saying it's a whole bunch of shit. It's tremendous shit. And he'll do that to refer to poor form in the gym. He's pretty fun. He definitely speaks fast, but he does have the captions always on the screen. So check out again, online training, nuevo boot camp, rutina para cuádriceps. There you got that. Finisher. Look at the Spanglish. Look, deja de pichearle a los días de upper. What did I talk to you about upper body? They're going to say upper. Let's look at this one.
Estás bien empeñada en subirle el peso a los deadlift, hacer walking lunges bien pesados. ¿Y quieres?
What was that? Entregarle, right? I think she said entregarle, not somebody.
Estás bien empeñada en subirle el peso a los deadlift, hacer walking lunges.
Empeñado is you're really stuck on, you're really committed to basically your deadlifts, your walking lunges.
Estás bien empeñada en subirle el peso a los deadlift, hacer walking lunges bien pesados. ¿Y quieres? Mejorar tus piernas. Pero para esos ejercicios tienes que agarrar las pesas con las manos, no con tus pies. Y cuando llegue el día upper body, ay no, pero es que eso está bien pesado. No, es que voy a poner como un hombre. Ay, pero es que me duelen las manos. Puñeta, ¿cómo tú pretendes que esos ejercicios del tren inferior de tus piernas mejoren si tus manos no tienen la capacidad de agarrar duro, de tener fuerza? Si tú entendieras de una vez y por todas lo mucho que repercute tu entrenamiento de tren superior en tus piernas, es bien probable que le hicieras caso. Porque si yo te digo a ti ahora que hacer ejercicios de espalda te va a ayudar a tener unos glúteos más grandes, es bien probable que le prestes más atención a los pesos que estás utilizando en tus ejercicios de remo, barbell rows, lat pull down. Porque ¿sabes qué, amiga? Cuando tú le aumentas peso a eso y cuando te toque hacer deadlift, vas a poder manejar más peso. Y si tienes más peso en tus deadlift, vas a tener glúteos más grandes. Así que deja de comer mierda en tus días de upper body, que te aseguro que si tú aprietas tu upper, tu lower va a mejorar bastante.
Mira para allá. I didn't even know that the video exists, but I feel so validated. Upper, right? What other Spanglish should you use? Deadlifts, walking lunges. A lot of times the names of exercises, guys, are going to stay in English. He talked about exactly what Alfredo touched on in the episode. When he was first doing his training, he felt like his trainer wasn't atacando suficiente las piernas. He wasn't really attacking the legs, getting a lot of leg work in the gym. He had a lot more upper body, but it's because Alfredo had to create more strength, as Norberto is talking about here. We need strength in your arms to be able to hold the weights. The reality is that you can use much heavier weights typically with your lower body than your upper body, but you can't do that if you don't have grip strength, if you don't have you know, a lot of grip strength is also going to be your antebrazo, your forearm, trapecio. You need your back to be strong, is what we talked about, of course, for deadlifts and etc. That's exactly what he was talking about. And he used exactly the type of language that we use. It's really going to be the most natural way for people to speak about exercising here. I can go on and watch a ton of these more. We could have a ton of fun. Like I said, I can do this for hours. Would love to hear from you. Share with me a little bit about your rutina en el gimnasio or la forma en que tú haces ejercicio, pero te voy a decir una cosa. Si corren, we've got nothing in common. If you're a runner, sorry. There's where my exercise line is drawn. Thank you so much. As always, if you could give a like to the episode, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok to keep up with my ever so often gym bro postings. Hasta la próxima, mi gente.